All right, Kevin, let's do this. Let's dive in. So I know where we're going to start. We're actually going to start with me because you're going to be like, what? How is this even possible? So I'm 46 and I live, you're 76. So we got a 30-year gap here. I grew up with the Raccoons. I had, the Cyril Sneer doll. I had some of the Raccoons. My brother and I used to fight over them. But this thing goes deeper because my mom worked at CBC and she was the one who was marketing the records. And my
Oh,
brother and I were on the music video set of Lisa Lougheed's music video for Run With Us.
oh my gosh. Where, where, holy mackerel. I have Cyril Sear kind of overlooking us. I don't know whether you can see him in the background there, but he's actually hugging the Gemini Award that we got.
Nice.
But you were actually on the set that night. Your parents allowed you to stay up that late? I mean, I think we shot it like after midnight and it was off of Bloor Street in Toronto.
Yep.
And, Rodney Charters, who actually ended up being, he was the DOP, and he ended up doing 24 with Kiefer Sutherland for years. So I can't believe it. I think we had a smoke machine too. Did they keep you away from
Yeah.
the smoke machine? Did you get onto the craft table? You could eat the hot dogs?
I was too young to remember that. My mom swore that I was in the video. I rewatched it again last night. I didn't see
Oh,
myself. So, what do you remember what year you shot the music video?
I want to say 1988 or 87. I think it was either 87 or 88. Yeah. I
So I
can go
was
back and check the copyright on it.
I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I
Wow.
remember the alley being a little freaky, but my mom
Yeah.
was like so involved in the project that she wanted me to experience that. So the irony is, here I am, 30 plus years later, loving the music industry, in the music industry, and that was one of my huge first forays into this crazy world was on the music video set for Run With Us, your famous theme song.
Oh my gosh. Say hello to your mom.
I will. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me into this crazy
Oh
world.
my gosh. That is such an oh my, I got chills up my back. That's really, wow. That's really cool, Chris. Really cool.
I
Oh,
I appreciate your time and for chatting with me. It's such a funny thing, life, right? How you can go living for 30, 40 years and then have this crazy moment that takes you back in time. How did you even come up with the concept of the raccoons? Was this something that came with you from your youth? Was it spontaneous? Was it a long creation journey? Give me the story.
okay. Well, back just before then, I was working with a writer by the name of Gary Dunford. He used to write for the Toronto Sun. And Gary and I were working on a television series together called Celebrity Cooks, and it was hosted by Bruno Gerussi. And in between the episodes, we would shoot 3 episodes a day. And in between the episodes, Gary and I would obviously eat the leftovers, and we would dream up ideas for television shows. And we came up with this idea about a Christmas story. And originally, it was going to be puppets, and Bruno Gerussi was going to be the forest ranger, excuse me, and we were going to do a little bit of peanut butter there still, and Bruno Gerussi was going to be the forest ranger, and the raccoons were going to be puppets. The story originated from my parents' cottage, where my dad had to go in and get a raccoon out of the chimney that had come down, and there was a blockage. He couldn't, the chimney went into, or actually the stovepipe went into the chimney, and the raccoon was in there causing some havoc. And so I was telling Gary about it, and we decided to build a story around that. And that was going to be the Christmas raccoons. And originally, it was going to be one time special only. Gary went on to actually work for the Sun, and we kind of let the project go. and I ended up watching, an animated special called The Point, that was done, right after that, and I thought about the idea of maybe trying to see if I could resurrect it and do it with animation, and, just thinking it would be a one-time special, and that was
Mm.
it, and I went around pitching it for 2 or 3 years, teamed up with a lawyer in Ottawa by the name of Sheldon Wiseman, and, he became the business aspect of it, and we went around pitching it together, and finally CBC, said, "Yeah, let's try it for a half-hour Christmas special." That was it.
So the Christmas special gave birth to the series at large. I love that it's a family story. You know, I try to preach this to artists that I work with, creatives of all walks of life, that your truth is your art, and that's the best stuff. So you took a raccoon story from your own family and life and brought that to life figuratively.
Well, thanks. As we went eventually, we did, 3 more specials, and, as we eventually went into, doing a series, many of the stories actually started back from and the characters. People always ask me, "Well, who was Serial Seer based upon?" I said, "Well, I'd have to I'd have to probably kill you if I told you, or they kill me, one of the 2." Uh, but, many of the characters, including Serial Snare, were roughly based on real people.
Yeah.
I There was a gentleman who ran the general store up, in the Upper Ottawa Valley where, our my parents' cottage was, and, uh, he had many of the characteristics that, Mr. Willow, who actually ran the general store and had, and a lot of the characters, I Burt Raccoon, I think, probably emanated a lot from my own, personality, being a little bit, uh, impetuous at times,
Mm.
trying to make things, like, "Sure I can do it, sure I can do it," even though I probably deep in my heart, I can't do this, but I can do it. And of course, a love for peanut butter and pizza, so
So art imitating life in the sense that you took a lot of these characters from stuff that was within your physical world and then externalize it into the characters.
transposing, and when you work in a writer's room, we had a great team of writers, on the Raccoons over. I mean, we did it from the very first special till the final episode was over 11 years. And of course, we had a great team of writers, over that period of time. And so when you sit down in a writer's room, you start kind of like we're starting here today. You just start talking about things that, you know, might have happened in your day, or somebody might come in and say, "I can't believe what just happened at the front door as I walked in here," and
Yeah.
it pushes something out. It's really all about, communicating with each other, and just, it can be something that you love, something that maybe just had a momentary impact on you, but it usually triggers something with somebody else. I mean, and none of these things come from, I believe, from one mind. I think they come from a collection of ideas that people are just floating around in their head, which kind of scares me about AI a little bit today. More than scares me.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on a lot of conversations lately, as we're developing, new IP, that these notions that you share with people, and they that might trigger something that comes back, that starts a story,
Mm.
because stories have to have a genesis. They have to emanate from something,
Yeah.
and I really believe that it's it's an uncertain time that we're facing right now, and I hope, as not just creators, I hope as people, that we recognize that, and we protect that genesis, that ability to speak and pass on ideas and share crazy moments and funny things that happen and sad things. And it's it's going to be it's going to be a challenge, I think, for not just for creators and writers and uh, animators and actors. It's going to be just for everyday people who are part of that they're
Yeah.
the world audience. It's going to be very important to protect that.
I agree with you. I think that I mean, technology is one of the best disruptors, and sometimes the intention is one thing, but then the use case becomes something else. The internet's changed how the world is and how art and ideas
Yeah.
are shared. I'm hoping that what we do is find that balance with AI, where it's a tool. It's something that helps us do things more efficiently, faster, better. But then, like you said, that the ideas, the art, the authenticity still comes from us. And then maybe it gets disseminated and created and shared faster or better than we could have before. Maybe it allows for more creativity, a beautiful renaissance of creativity, but not that it generates all of the content ideas. So I'm with you. We need to stick to our story. So let me ask you this. Speaking of stories, the characters are a lot more complex than just a cartoon show. There's, the son whose dad is one way, but he doesn't really buy into his dad's virtues. He's trying to like secretly help the raccoons and other people. There's a lot of complex emotion within these characters, and the underlying vibe for me, even though there's good versus evil and a nemesis in the raccoons, um, there's a lot of heart. There's a lot of, like, trying to do the right thing, trying to be good. That seems like it's the big line underneath the show. Is that accurate?
Uh, I think so. I think that the I have a couple of I guess observations that 40 years have imbued in me a little bit, and that is we had half an hour, which today's animation culture doesn't have. I mean, I remember when broadcasters would say, "Well, could you make it 2 11s?" And then it was 3 7s, and now it's like, anything over 2 minutes is too long. You lose your
Mm,
audience. They scroll along. We had half an hour, and half an hour gave you, I guess, the luxury of being able to tell a story not from just one viewpoint, but
mm,
maybe a different viewpoint. And I think one of the stories you were just starting to talk about there was Cyril and his son Cedric. They do live on different planes, but they are part of the same family.
mhm,
Uh, and you can see Cedric in as the series grows, starting to pull away from his father, but at the same time loving his father, understanding him. He, you know, he would never be like his father, but there are elements that his father has imbued in him as he grew up, that will always be there. Conscientiousness. I think that's one thing that Cedric would be. So having that half hour allowed you to be able to project more than one point of view, and it also allowed you to really get behind the scenes of what maybe that character was struggling with at the time or what they were trying to do. And at the same time, have it all fit into other things. Like we always had an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot. Invariably, the pigs were the C plot. I mean, once we had the pigs come on the scene, and it was in the third specials when we first introduced them, we realized that they could carry a story, but they were probably best equipped to be the C plot, because you would always wonder, how are they going to screw things up next,
yeah,
and how the hell were they ever going to get out of it? I mean, so you cared about it, but it wasn't really the main story that was carrying you through. It was
right.
you would be able to, you know, not even think about it for 4 or 5 minutes, and then pick back up on it 5 minutes later. So
So
I think that the half hour format gave us a lot of, uh, I guess, freedom to be able to explore things. And I think when you say that to writers and animators, and I always said that the animators were, they were, or they were really the actors only with pencils, you know.
Mhm.
They You could write a script and then you go into the storyboarding process, and the animators would come back and say, "Oh, you know, what if we tried this? What if we tried that?" Like, having that again, that half hour and that freedom to say, "Hey, that's not let's try that." You weren't locked.
Mhm.
You were never, well, we used to have to, okay, is the script locked? Yeah, the script's locked, but here comes the storyboard, and then the recording session, and then the editing session, you know? So I think that gave us the ability to explore, to delve deeper, and to be more emotional, I think, or at
Yeah.
least pull out the emotions.
Well, so you had the room and the creativity to dive deeper and kind of layer these stories even more, but what about this fundamental idea of a father and a son being so different, and then having that, emotional and philosophical struggle of, "I don't like what you're doing, and I don't agree with it, but I'm still your son, and I still love you, dad."
Yeah.
You know, does that come from your personal life? Does it come from one of the writers specifically? Tell me a little bit how this got infused into the story.
It's a really good question. I had a very wonderful, relationship with my father and my mother, and, uh, but there were times that my father and I would not agree, and, it's, yes, certainly, I ran away from home once, and
Oh,
that
wow.
story ended up, being in well, not that story, but that element actually, became, an episode in the Raccoons when Cedric ran away from home, and, how he and his father reconciled. Uh, it was I mean, it wasn't a huge schism or something with my dad. It was something that happened over a Christmas time, and I decided I was gonna go to Toronto, get on the train and go to Toronto with my guitar. And and, but, yeah, I think I did mine, probably my own psyche, a fair bit. I I I I guess if I was asked to look at all the episodes, I wouldn't say all of them, but certainly not all of them, because writers also came in with really great ideas that they wanted to explore and do, and we would do it. But every once in a while, I would talk about something that, or I wouldn't even mention that it was from my past. I think the Raccoons on Ice is probably a very good example that, w of a story, just the basic framework of a story that was true,
Mhm.
and then we f filled it in with, uh, from the Raccoons' point of view. It was, I don't know if you recall the story, but at the very end of the Raccoons on Ice, Julie and Tommy, the 2 kids, and Ranger Dan went out skating the next morning, and they found these marks on the ice that hadn't
Mhm.
been there the day before. And, of course, in the story, the raccoons take on Cyril Sneer in order to save the Evergreen, Lake, the pond, from
Yeah.
being, uh, built into a huge, big hockey arena enterprise. So they could keep their place that they could skate. And, that that whole battle took place on that little hockey rink. Well, that hockey rink did exist, and it was a place that we did go skating. And, one morning we did go out, and there were lots of marks there that we didn't see the day before. They were probably just the wind shifting the snow or whatever at the time, but it stuck in my mind as being
Yeah.
something that happened and somehow got magically transported years later to sitting down and writing the Raccoons on Ice story. So
That's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing that, and, I think that is the beauty of art and storytelling is that sometimes it's just this amazing experience that you have in life that you are then sharing outwards with the larger community, and in a different way. You know, maybe it's not the exact thing that happened and it's done through an animated series, but it's coming from truth, and that's beautiful. Why don't you take me back a little bit more? Because as much as I want to talk about art and raccoons, I also want to talk about your career and your mindset. What's the arc? You know, like where is young Kevin and how does he decide, like, I'm going to be in film or television? You just mentioned a guitar. Did it start with music and then morph over the years? Are you the musician that never got into music and you're like, I guess I'll just do this other career? Tell me about your journey.
well, I, uh, I grew up in a family. My mother wanted me to. First of all, I was in love with guitar, and I when I grew up, my parents, I think it was on Sunday nights after Disney, it was the Ozzie and Harriet show would come on, and it was Ricky Nelson. And Ricky was a teenager at the time, and after every episode, they'd flash away, almost like a concert video of Ricky Nelson with his guitar. Hello, Mary Lou, goodbye, heart. And I just went, "That's me. I got to do that," you know. And I would like get up in front of the mirror in my. I didn't have a mirror in my bedroom, but my parents had this big mirror, so I would go in, you know, and start pretending and then playing the guitar. Uh, I was a paper boy. I had two paper routes. I was a Toronto Telegram paper boy at night and a Trentonian paper boy in the morning. And I saved my money up and bought a guitar, a Stella guitar. And my mother wanted me to play piano. She had, I don't know how it ever became pink. I think she painted it pink, but she had a piano that I think was her father's. And she painted it pink. She wanted me to learn piano. And she sent me to the nuns to learn how to play piano. And I think after 3 or 4 lessons, as they whacked my fingers, if no, you're not doing that right. She said, Mrs. Gillis, save your money. He'll never be anything in music. So just that's, you know, and then that's when the guitar came in. Um, I I played guitar all through high school. I was very much into folk singing. I wrote my first song actually with uh, a, a young guy that I went to high school with. It was called Jelly Beans. It became kind of a high school hit. Uh, amongst our group. It probably I could probably even sing it for you today, but I won't.
Save it for the end. Outro.
Anyway, I wanted to be a folk singer, and I ended up at the end of high school, end of grade 13. I took a year off to try to make it as a folk singer, and ended up playing at a club in Ottawa at the time called Le Hibou. It was a lot of artists came through, and I ended up fortunately opening for a lot of them. Uh, People like Jerry Jeff Walker and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, and I also at the same time ended up getting a television special because I went and knocked on the door of CJOH television, and a couple of the executives there took a shine and helped me out early in my career. I Probably one of the biggest moments was that I opened for Chris Christopherson at Le Hibou for I think 3 nights, and I asked him if he ever would, you know, would want me to open some other time. I'd be open to do it, and he said, "Well, would you like to come to New York and open for me at the bitter end?" And oof, yeah, would we? So my bass player and I, we found our way down to New York
Wow.
and opened for him. I think 2 nights out of 3. There was one night that, we got bumped because one of the record companies wanted him, wanted their act to be the opening act. But through that relationship, it had a huge knock-on effect on my life and on the Raccoons, actually, because
Okay, so
uh,
let me interrupt because you've already said some really cool things, and I want to hear the rest of the story. But I'm starting to get this picture, you know, of who you are and the mindset and how you got to here. There's this young boy who is a creative, and he is learning how to express himself. He's doing piano, which led to guitar. You're writing song. You're putting pen to paper and getting what's inside out. You said that you went and you found your opportunity. You knocked on this door and got a special. How did you have um, that drive and push to do that? Because not everyone can do that. Not everyone is comfortable even leaving their front door, let alone going to someone else's door and saying, "Hey, this is me. Give me a special." Where did that come from?
well, I didn't go and ask, "Give me a special." I asked, I just, uh, they had I guess it was like an uh, amateur hour on the show or on the station, and I appeared on that. And then I ended up talking to the director and a couple of the executives there who wanted to hear more. And I think it was right after the Chris Christopherson opportunity down in New York. One of the executives had read about something about it, about the show, knew about it, and um, followed up with me and said, "Well, why don't we have you host a series?" And because I had been playing at Lahibu, I was able to get Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee to come on and be guests on the show, and Jonathan Edwards actually as well, the guy who did "Sunshine Go Away Today."
Mhm.
Uh, and I ended up actually going to Boston and through him and meeting his manager, and his manager ended up managing me at the time as well. So that door I did knock on, and I remember walking in with my guitar, knocked on the door, asked to speak to Peter Casperson, and he was really a wonderful man who is a wonderful man, and took me into his office and said, "Okay, play me something." I played a
Mm.
couple of songs, and next thing you know, he was managing me. So I,
Where does that can-do spirit come from? Because I work with so many artists that don't know how to just create opportunity. It's I don't know if it's the zeitgeist now of people not being as personable or whatever, but how did you do it? Because that's such a huge fundamental thing to the momentum that you created for your career.
uh, I was the oldest of 7 kids, and I was the king of the road, king of the roost until the rest of them came along. And I think that uh, my mother and father, I vividly remember, particularly at the cottage, when we always had a family dinner every night. And it was always a little bit later than everybody else because many of us grew up in France. And so we ate later. It was just kind of the thing to do. We didn't eat at 5 o'clock. We ate at 7:30 or sometimes 8 o'clock. Uh, I think it was the fact that if you didn't reach out and get that hot potato or chunk of pork chop or whatever, if you weren't fast enough to do it, you went to bed a little bit hungrier than the rest. Uh, I think that kind of pushed me because my brothers and sisters they're all pretty outgoing. Uh, they're all very outgoing, actually, and they've all done very well in their own careers. None of them are in music, interestingly enough, but they all like music, and some of them play. So I think it was probably just like if I don't push a little harder, I'm gonna, I've got the wolves at my tail here. Yeah, they're coming right after me. So that was probably part of it. I certainly wasn't. I probably became more aggressive. Aggressive is probably the wrong word.
Mhm.
More, more confident as I went forward. But it was always like, if I was going to pass anything on down to people, is if you don't try, you're judging yourself. It's kind of like, give yourself that opportunity. And the second thing I would pass on is always be polite, because you never know. And I'll tell you the story. Um, Chris Christopherson was managed by a wonderful, wonderful human being. His name was Bert Block, and Bert Block and Albert Grossman were partners.
Mhm.
You probably know their names. Grossman Block, they managed Bob Dylan. They managed, obviously, Chris, a lot of different people. When I went to New York, uh, I had already met Bert Block at Le Hibou in Ottawa. And I asked him, how do you get a publishing deal? And he said, well, I can help you with that. And he very kindly uh, took me over to meet one of the young publishers at Chapel Music at the time. And that young guy was named Tommy Mottola. And Tommy was my publisher for probably a year and a half to 2 years. That's not the point in the story. The point is that, flash forward from that point, which would have been 1975, I guess, 73, 75. Uh, I went on to do Raccoons and really got into it in 78, 79. And I realized in early 1980 that I needed a really great singer to not only play the voice of Melissa Raccoon, but to sing the songs that she
Mhm.
did in it. And I sent I decided Rita Coolidge is who I wanted. So I wrote to her agent. In those days, there was no email. You had to write cursively too, and and put in my phone number, because there was no, that's the only way somebody could get back to you or write back to you. And I got a call about 3 weeks later from Bert Block. Are you the same Kevin Gillis that I, helped out that time? And I said, yes, sir, that was me, and thank you. And I had thanked him way back when as well.
Mhm.
He said, yeah, I remember you. He said, yeah, you got Rita. Go
Wow.
with it. Yeah. And I just realized he was just a wonderful guy at the time. And I remember going to his office, and I can't remember. I didn't have a lot of money. I can't remember. He wouldn't take any commission. He got me this writer's deal. It was $100 a week. Oops, I'm probably not allowed to say how much, because there was an NDA in that contract 40 years ago. It was $100 US. Mind you, the Canadian dollar was worth more then.
Yeah.
And I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was
Wow.
like, yeah. And it lasted 2 years, and then, yeah, uh, went on to another publisher. But
So
just
being a good person, being worried that someone will steal all the potatoes and pork chops, a balance of drive and being good is creating opportunity for you. Does that sound right?
yeah, I think that being a good person, I'm not sure. It's being respectful, I think,
Mhm.
thanking people. Many, many people through my life have come in and out, and I'm I still work. I'm still working, and I'm still work with a lot of the same people that I started out with way back when. It's and some of them have come and gone. And then they come back again. And I think that's, you attract people that I guess uh, you want to attract. You want them around, and you keep them around. and sometimes it takes sacrifice, and sometimes it's a mutual thing. I, I just, I wrote a blog yesterday.
Okay, tell me.
I'm not a great writer of blogs, but I wrote a blog, uh, because on the Raccoons we have a website, and our social media people they're like, "Can you write something, something personal?" So I wrote this thing a couple weeks ago, and they said, "Oh, it's full of a lot of facts on that. Can you just kind of like write, kind of like you and I are talking today, actually?"
Of course, yeah.
And so I wrote this blog, and it was about Ed Stasium, and he's a lovely man who I met doing my first television show in 1976, and he was a rising star engineer producer at the time. And I've stayed in touch with him because he ended up mixing the Evergreen Nights, the Lisa Lougheed album. Um, and I decided in the blog I was going to go back to this, how this story started with Ed Stasium, and how it ended up and where he is today and where I am today, and that we're still in touch and talking. And
That's awesome.
he mixed, he produced and engineered a lot of different wonderful people, like the Ramones and Talking Heads and Phyllis Gladys Knight and the Pips, and just one of those little things that happened in my life way back in '76, and here we are. Oh my gosh, is it 40 years? I guess it is. 40
Yeah,
years later, and here we're talking on the phone, and I just, yeah, do you remember that? Yeah, do you remember that? And I put it all in the blog, and it just it just kind of all, he's still there today. He was the guy who mixed that album and the single "Rum with Us." And he had just finished. He was working with the Ramones at the time when he did that, and it was like,
so
holy
cool.
mackerel.
I think that character is so important. I said good, before, maybe that's the wrong term, but you knew what you wanted. You were raised a certain way. You probably wanted to show up with others the way that you would hope that they would show up with you. Your character was strong. And because of that, you developed a really good relationship. So when opportunity came or when you had a project, it was much easier for you to find someone that would work on that project because of how you had treated them. It's funny because there's so many people I've talked to in the industry that their final word is just be good, just be nice, because you never know when you're going to need someone or run into someone again. And if they remember you because of something positive, they're more likely to help you out. It's kind of creating the opportunity, creating the luck. I don't want to just talk about Raccoons because there's so much more than meets the eye. I love this Chris Christopherson arc, but I had to ask, there's like a fitness show that you were the host of, then there's like
Oh,
RoboCop, there's so many other things that are going on. At what point did you say to yourself, "I'm not gonna be a folk singer-songwriter, and I'm pivoting into Raccoons or into any type of film or television?" Was it like a conscious decision or just it just happened?
well, um, in 1976, when I met Ed Stasium, I I was very fortunate. Gary Dunford and I went in to pitch a television variety series at a CTV station in Ottawa called CJOH, and they had a big production arm called Carlton Productions. We went in and pitched the idea of yours truly, moi, hosting a musical variety series, and that kind of came from that special, I guess, a little bit from a few years earlier. And I ended up hosting the show. Gary and we created it, and we we were very lucky. Carlton went out and got a very well known director at the time, a Canadian, well, Danish Canadian, by the name of Jorn Wenther, and he had just done. I guess he was doing the Sonny and Cher show at the time, and he was uh, he was just a very well experienced guy and who did an incredible job. We got at the time some pretty big names. We got the Bay City Rollers, you know, came on the show. That was on our pilot, and Melissa Manchester, uh, people like that. And anyway, I realized I think I was hosting the show, and it was a show that Gary and I had spent a lot of time working on and creating, and I think I realized that the main decisions that were made on that show weren't Gary or I, maybe Gary, but it was people behind the scenes who really had uh, I guess the power is the wrong word, but had the choices to be able
Mhm.
to enact those choices. And that's what I started to realize. I think that was my first point that and also was like you had to go to bed early and get up early and everything else because you had to rehearse in the morning and they wanted you in bed early so you didn't have bags under your eyes, all this stuff. And I remember everybody else going out for drinks and eats and that kind of go back to the hotel and go to bed. It was like, what? Anyway, I realized that maybe there was more to be done behind the camera than in front of the camera. And that kind of, at that point, that had the knock-on effect that I didn't really have time to go out and do live shows anymore. Uh, and I wanted to write. I wanted to write music and write shows, and produce. And I think that combination of events and realization sort of led me into doing that. I met through again through Burt Block and Tommy Mottola. I met John Stroll, who was my music writing partner for many years, and we went on uh, to do a lot of different shows. But to answer your question, that's how I got into doing. I think Yes You Can, which was the sports show,
Mhm.
was happened right around the same time as Raccoons. There was crossovers in there, 79, 1979, 1980. I think that was probably the realization that get behind the camera. You know, you have more choices to make. You can and you have a little bit more time. Your time isn't always focused on uh, being in front of the camera and remembering your lines or remembering the verses from of your songs. Uh, so that's how I ended up starting with that. RoboCop uh, came about very interestingly. We
Let
at the
let me
time I
interrupt
Yeah,
let me interrupt
sure.
for a sec 'cause I'm excited about RoboCop and some of the other stuff, but it's funny because the show is called Yes You Can. We've talked about the raccoons, and there's this underlying, like, love and desire to do right and change the world and then help, and then you have a big family that you grew up with. Are you like this positive person all the time? I it's funny 'cause I hear Yes You Can, the show, and that kinda sums up you for me, where there's this big smile and there's a can-do attitude, and I'm gonna make everything happen for myself. Does that feel like you? Is that how you've always been?
I I I think, I yeah, I think I've been very fortunate. To be born to parents that were very supportive, um, very loving, uh, with a mom who always laughed,
Mm.
always laughed. Uh, Even when she was chastising, she at the end, she'd do her thing like that, and then she'd, "I can't do this anymore," and she'd start to giggle, you know? And a dad who was he was very he he had the ability to he wouldn't laugh out loud, but his sense of humor would come out kind of like under his breath, like if you had to kind of like cock your ear to hear what he was going to say, but it was always extremely to the point and usually very funny. My younger one of my younger brothers is exactly like that. I mean, when he starts, I have to cock. Can you speak that? Say that a little louder? Yeah. But so I think I was not to think. I know I was very fortunate to be born into that milieu,
Mhm.
uh, even though I had to keep ahead of the horde behind me.
Oh, so
um,
you sound like you're, very positive person and you're kind of trying to perpetuate that positivity with your art. In your words, what's your raison d'être? Why are you doing all this stuff outside of the need to just do it? Are you trying to create something positive for the world, impact change? Well, give me your thoughts.
I never thought when well, I definitely never thought when I first started out, but let's jump to even when Raccoons, and that was after Yes You Can, and or at the same time, it was after Bang Bang You're Alive, the TV series, and it was certainly after I had been fortunate enough to meet some of the very impactful people that I did meet at that in the mid to or early to later 70s. I never thought that I had no grand plan to to be somebody or to I I I always felt I was a bit on the stage. Uh, I guess the stage of life. I always felt that I wanted to do well and pass something on, to leave something that I had been given. Um, I've been given a lot of love and a lot of opportunities and a lot of it would have I would have been embarrassed and humiliated myself if I'd come back from New York or say 3 years after and said, "Yes, Chris Christopherson and his manager got me a publishing deal with a big publisher in New York, but I let it go."
Mhm.
I think it was important that I do something with that.
Yeah.
And, if you had asked me at the time, Chris, it wasn't conscious going, "I have to do this." But if I when I look at it, I just go, it's like I could say the same thing for today. I mean, we're looking at this resurgence on Raccoons and particularly on the music of it. And I would love to take a few days off and just kind of go fishing, or maybe if it was the winter, go skate on the lake a little bit. But
Yeah.
but I feel like I have to get I have to take that what was done and given to me and try to make it important. Important's the wrong word. Make it uh, share it with
Yeah.
other people because I do think putting a smile on your face. There are days everybody gets up. Everybody in the world gets up feeling at some point in their days, wow, I don't feel like doing this, or I've got, how am I going to pay that bill, or how am I going to feed my family? Uh, I, I've been I've been in that boat way back when, for sure. Uh,
Mm.
my mother used to, when I finally moved out, my mother used to drop off. It, she never admitted to it, but there would be a cardboard box at the top of the stairs in this apartment where I lived with four other guys. And thankfully, they didn't eat it. My mother would always leave cans of beans because I loved beans and uh, dry goods. She would always leave dry goods, and sometimes like date squares. I really like date squares. So, but I, I was given a lot. I just, uh, I think it's in me to share that thankfulness, I guess.
I
That's
love that. I mean, that's
you
the
know?
best reason to do it. It sounds like it was infused in you from your parents and from your childhood, and you just want to take that and do the same. And you've been able to do it in such an incredible way with your art, not just the music and the raccoons, but all the other stuff that you've done. I'm sure you've touched lives on the other shows and with producing and whatnot. I didn't even realize how big Raccoons was until I started to prepare for our chat. 180 countries around the world, picked up by Disney in the US, the BBC One in the UK, the list goes on. So you've impacted probably more people than you even realize. And it sounds like you're doing it just because you want to and you feel like you need to, not because of getting something from it.
I I I think there's, yeah, definitely some truth to that. My I, I by way of maybe to put some perspective on it,
Mm,
I got during COVID, which was a very difficult time for people in the animation business and that, I got a call, from a distributor in the, and this is long after Raccoons. This is like, you know, 20 years later type of thing. I got a call from a distributor in, LA, uh, saying, "Have you ever digitized, Raccoons?" And I said, Have I ever what?" It was like, "Digitize. Oh, right, right. Okay, I know what you mean. No, I haven't." Well, there may be an opportunity, because people are looking for, legacy shows right now. Maybe an opportunity if we could see how it would look digitized. So they asked me to send down I think it was a digibeta cam or something. Uh, so I sent down a tape, and they they sent it back. They digitized it and restored it, and it was awful. God, it was awful. It was just. I said, "Why would I want to do that?" It's like he said, "Well, I guess you didn't. You probably never did this. It's too bad you didn't do it on film." I said, "Well, we did do it on film. We did it on 35 millimeter." So it was a big uh, decision, I guess. I remember talking to my wife at the time. He said, "Well, if you got one of the films, maybe we could take a test on that." So I sent down one of the 35 millimeter films, and they restored and remastered it, and they gave me a quote on what it was going to cost to do the series. And I went, "Whew." Uh, and I talked my wife into saying, "Okay, let's do this," because this distributor was very insistent, shall we say.
okay.
And I did it. Don't ask me why I did it. I was last thing on my mind at the time was Raccoons. Had been off the air. I was working on new shows, but really it was a struggle because it was COVID.
Mm,
And anyway, took the chance and it took off again. Why did I do that? The only thing I can think of, Chris, is that uh, it just I just had to go with the flow at that point, right? Because it wasn't something like I was driven. Oh, I must get this out there. It wasn't that at all.
hmm.
And I took a big financial risk
Yeah.
to pay for all that restoration. And it was certainly not to put on my headstone because I probably won't have a headstone.
It's funny how I
It's
mean, you said go with the flow there. That's something that I live and breathe as much as possible. It's so important. Opportunity knocked, and you took a risk, and you did it because it felt right, and you had no idea what the outcome would be, and yet here you are, 40th anniversary of the show, and this whole thing is kind of getting a reboot in many ways. It's fascinating that the whole thing was this just fell in my lap, and I'm just doing it again.
it was uh, it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I never honestly I knew that there were fans out there because I used to get letters.
Mm.
Every once in a while, I do get a letter now, but mostly it's emails from the bill collectors. Um, it's but it's fascinating that that doing that it was like an all new adventure again, and it keeps me away from fishing and biking, but it has its own joys. I mean, when you get so many people, I was telling you about that musical blog there that I wrote, and people
Mm.
started writing in. I did one a few weeks ago, and people started writing in about asking questions about what had happened, and I realized that wow, we have people out there who actually know the shows better than I do. Some of them.
Mm.
I mean, it's amazing. People ask questions about why something happened in a show, and I go, "Ooh, I better go back and take a look at it." But it does give you it gives you a perspective on on your life because you start to think about where you were when you were doing this,
Mm.
and as I mentioned, being still working with a lot of the same people and being in touch with them and having good laughs about things that we did at that time,
Yeah.
but
You've you've done so much in your career. I mean, I haven't even got into we mentioned RoboCop there. There's these other companies that you had, and then I believe those led into, oh my goodness, president of Sky Reader Media Inc. These morphed into the company that you're currently running, which I don't know why I can't find the note in here. But there's musician and writer and producer and animation and TV series and all this other stuff. Do you have one specific role that you identify with the most at your core, or do you just embody all of these equally?
um, well, I could say chief bottle washer, but my my, uh, my close friends would always say chief good nighter. When we would finish up the recordings, I'm always the last person to leave the recording studio, at 4 o'clock in the morning or the animation studio at 9 o'clock at night. And I'm always saying, thank you. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good night. Um, I think just making sure that everything gets locked down and put away for the night, just in case it's a bad storm out there. Just wrapping up things so that things aren't sitting out. And I guess if you're going to translate or transpose that to a role, it's probably producer. Just
Mm.
make it creative producer, just trying to make sure that all the pieces are fitting and everybody's, being tucked away for the night until the next
Fatherly,
day.
fatherly figure, making sure everyone's taken safe. I wanna end on the Raccoons for obvious reasons with the 40th anniversary and the reboot happening now, but, tell me about RoboCop.
uh, when I When I was doing, Raccoons, I was working originally, we did all the, post-production in, Montreal because Ottawa, where we animated everything, didn't have a lab, and we were doing, as I mentioned earlier, everything on 35 millimeter film. And, so we did our post-production, our mixing and everything, and, in Montreal, and then we moved as digitization started to come in, we moved, to, Toronto, to do our last 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons. And I was working at a, post-production place, called Dome Productions in Toronto. It was owned by Labatt's,
Okay.
and, I, ended up, and this is kind of a prelude to the final story, but, I ended up going in there, probably every 7 to 10 days because we were delivering shows that quickly at that time, and, I'd go down to do the mixes, and, I got an opportunity, to actually, was towards the end of doing Raccoons, it was right as we early '91 as we were delivering the last few episodes. And one of the gentlemen who was running Dome Productions at the time was wanting to get into doing native production. Labatt's was a very large conglomerate at the time. They owned obviously the Blue Jays, TSN, and uh, Dome Productions. They owned Concert Promotions International, who did all the Rolling Stones tours. It's a big, big company, but they didn't have it, and they had a commercial division as well called Partners, and but they didn't have television production, which was unusual, I guess.
Mhm.
And the GM, guy by the name of Brian Ross, he wanted to set one up, and came in one day and he said, "Would you be interested in coming and working at Labatt's at the time?" And I knew Raccoons was fading off, and I said, "Sure." And so we started off a production called Sky Vision, and he and I were the first two, and slowly but surely we put people together. But we had an agent at the time down in LA who, with I think he was with ICM at the time, and his name was Bob Sinitsky. And Bob was after he said, "You guys need to get a big property in there." And I was we had done a pet show. We'd done very, very few productions. We didn't do animation because the head of Labatt's at the time uh, memorably told me on the day that I signed and we went out for a celebratory lunch, as I said, "Gordon, this is so wonderful. But Labatt's financing and know-how. Think of all the animation we can do."
Hmm.
Gordon had a cigar always, and leaned over to me and went, "Kevin, did I tell you we were a beer company?" I just went, "No." "Yes, you did." Anyway, so we didn't do animation. So Bob Sinitsky pitched us because at the time, uh, Orion Productions in LA were having financial difficulties and they had to spin some concepts off. And we RoboCop was one of them, and so was Effects, the series. And we put a bid in to get the rights. And it was a struggle. It was a lot of negotiating, and it was probably my biggest lesson I ever learned in negotiating. Um, but we got the rights, and we put it together. It was a big production. I think our episodic costs at the time, I guess I'm allowed to put it, let it out, was about $1,500,000, which is 1994. A lot of money, a
Yeah.
lot of money. Uh, and we were very fortunate. We were able to get it into production, sold around the world. And my writing partner, John Stroll, and I wrote the music for it.
So that's
So
amazing. So music has like remained prevalent in your life even while doing all these other things. And I just find it so fascinating and enviable that you somehow just keep creating opportunity and these crazy things that somehow coalesce around you at different stages in your life. You know, taking a step back for a second, Run With Us Productions, that was the name that I was trying to remember before. Like, can you imagine going back to that younger version of yourself with the dad and the raccoons in the chimney and flashing forward to this conversation and Run With Us Productions and Labatt and RoboCop? Like, what would you even say?
uh, I'd probably take a line from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. "Who are those guys anyway?" Sounds like a Cyril Sneer line,
Of course.
but yeah, I no, I can't imagine, Chris. I'm just very thankful, and I've I I enjoy what I'm doing, and I appreciate the 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 hundreds of people, thousands of people that in my life have made a difference one way or the other, just, sometimes it's a big thing that people have helped me with, and sometimes so many people don't even realize how much they've helped me, and uh, I try to reach out and we and let people know. I respond a lot to what people write on our social media. I enjoy that. Sometimes it's very some of the stories that they tell are very uh, emotionally uh, wrenching, actually, and those are the ones that I make sure that I reach out to, and I hope that I hope that I'm able to give something back to them that they have to me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You said so many things just now and throughout this conversation that I live and breathe by. And personally, that I try to teach to our artists. I do coaching as well for mindset. I mean, going with the flow, gratitude and appreciation, which for me is one of the easiest ways to remain present is through gratitude. And then creating for creation's sake. You've been doing all these things, which is the secret formula to potential success, not guaranteed. um, let's wrap with the raccoons before we sign off. I have a question. So Lisa Lahid, she is. I didn't even realize that she was the voice of one of the raccoons. She
Yeah.
also becomes, this. I think Juno's Juno Awards. I think she won most promising vocalist or something like that. Huge. Go ahead. You want to say something? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I got I got a copy of, she was nominated, the year that we came out with, the Evergreen Nights album. Um, she was nominated, that year. I don't think she won that year, but I think she might have won the year after,
Mhm,
Raccoons. She went on and did a dance, became more of a dance, music artist. I
mhm.
think she might have won that year, but, she's, certainly a huge talent and did a great job. She was yeah, we created a character for her, Lisa Raccoon, and,
Yeah,
interestingly enough, we Lisa Raccoon became, with Bert Raccoon, they became, for a short period of time, the mascots for the Canadian Junior Olympics, and,
yeah. I saw that. That's another mind-blowing level to all of this, right, with the,
it's
Olympic involvement.
it was it was just one of those things that happened, and it was a great experience, actually, but Lisa was, uh, she did a great job. Great actor, and obviously a great singer, great performer
Yeah.
as well. So yeah.
Well, that song is near and dear to my heart, and like I shared at the top of our conversation that, I was there for the music video at such a
Oh,
young age, and I still love that song to this day. There's such a positive element to vocal harmonies and everything within that song. My question is this, so I'm not speculating or anything. My understanding is that she got pregnant and then she essentially left her career or whatever it was. She left the show. And even if she didn't, which is totally fine, the question is how hard is it for you or for a show or production to pivot around people leaving a production?
oh, that I think happened after she was on Raccoons. I didn't know she worked right through to the end of our last season.
Amazing.
So I lost track, frankly, of what she was doing because I had moved on to do RoboCop.
Yeah.
It
But that's not what I wasn't
but
trying to like
oh,
single her out or specify
yeah.
that. I just
Oh,
in
you're talking in general? Yeah. Well, I mean, that happens. Okay. In animation, it's a lot easier because your actors, as I said earlier, are the artists with their pencils, and they're also the voice actors. And uh, I lost a great friend. The gentleman, Len Carlson was his name. He was also I think he was a pro ball player at one point, but
Cool.
he Len Carlson was his name. He played Burt Raccoon. He also played about 18 other voices on the Raccoon series. And when we were doing Atomic Betty many years later, he did a lot of the voices on Atomic Betty. He was just one of those guys that he could come on. He'd always show up. I think I what I loved about him most, he would walk into the session. I don't care if it was pouring rain out, a snowstorm, whatever. Could have been the worst day of your life, and he'd walk in. Hello, everybody. Big smile on his face. Always a different pair of cowboy boots. He probably had the biggest collection of all time. But he did so many voices. He was just incredible. He was the voice of way back when for Kraft Foods. And he actually, when Mel Blanc got sick, and Mel Blanc was the voice of many of the characters on Looney Tunes, Len actually went down to LA and became the voice for all of Mel
Wow.
Blanc's characters. Yeah, he was just an amazing man. Uh, I don't know how, and a great actor and a very funny guy and beautiful cowboy boots, the best. Anyway, he he passed away right in the middle of us doing Atomic Betty. And he was up to doing, I think, 15, 16, 17 voices at that time. And I was asked to speak his eulogy. And at the end, I took the microphone. I said, would anybody else, because there were a lot of people in the industry were there, anybody else like to say anything? And this young whippersnapper way at the back of the chapel, big, I shouldn't say young, but big guy. And I'd never met him before. He put up his hand. He said, I would. And his name was Dwayne Hill. And he walked up the aisle. I gave him the microphone. And he said that he got into doing voice acting because of Len Carlson. And he gave a little story. And I was totally moved by the fact that Len had passed on to somebody else in the industry who I ended up hiring to do all of the voices that Len had done on the series.
Wow.
And it kind of taught me a lesson, or gave me an experience at the time that it's probably right around the time that this would have been 2000 and 2003, 2004, right around then. I realized that I had to spend more time with young people, and I made it known. And I got a lot of people reached out and asked if I would, give them some advice, or could they come and sit and talk. And it's probably been the number one thing that I've enjoyed for the last 20 years. Number one. Just and I'm working with 4 or 5 of them right now, and I get the greatest joy out of it.
That's
And
amazing.
I'm sure my advice is, they're probably going, nobody's yet called me an old geezer except my friends. But it's
So
been
let's
really wonderful. I mean, one of them happened this morning. We just got on the phone. We were talking about AI. That's why I started the conversation mentioning AI, because it was on my mind because of what we had talked about. And it was, he was concerned, just very, very concerned. And, it's like, as you mentioned, it was kind of like how you roll with the punches, because you know, how the record industry got disrupted by Napster, and then
yeah.
Spotify and everything else, but things changed. We're
Yeah.
not going to go back. I don't look back that often, except for when something comes up and I have to remember what exactly happened, and I go, okay. I keep a lot of notes too. I always have the notebook beside me. Always. Here's my notebook.
Well, so I've got one more question, but just kind of to
Sure.
summarize that thought. Um, Production and personnel change is inevitable, I guess, in film and television, and it's not insurmountable. Obviously, every situation is different, but in this specific example, holy, talk about like going with the flow and the universe providing an opportunity. Len passes away, and literally the baton is passed to a protege, like at the service. That's mind blowing. So it didn't stop things, and you just figured out a way to forge ahead. Is that the bottom line?
In that particular case, I asked Dwayne to come into the studio, and I in advance I gave him a few what we call sides. It's a few pages from the script that are specific to that session, and he came in. I thought it was just going to be a test, and he scored. He was able to nail it right down. Everyone, and Dwayne. God bless him. He moved to New York and became a writer, producer, and a big voice talent. And we're in touch. I was in New York last week. We were in touch down there. He's still doing. In fact, we're developing a new Raccoons feature right now. We're in the early stages, and I'm already planning on Len being the voice of Bert Raccoon because he's probably a bigger Bert than I am. Well, he's taller anyway, but
Taking a little bit of the past, paying homage to the past, but also like empowering the younger generations to be involved in the project as well. So this is where I want to end today. It's kind of
well,
selfish because for this podcast series, my first guest ever happened to be Jonathan Simkin, who I think is
oh,
fascinating, and
yeah.
I love his honesty. It's so
Oh,
rare in this industry, and even just on this planet right now. I am a big believer in that. I mean, I even have a tattoo on my arm that says "A violent need to." It's Randy Blythe from this band Lamb of God. A violent need to express the truth
yeah,
is essentially what it is, and that's
yeah.
kind of what I get from Mr. Simpkin. How did you and 604 Records hook up to reboot the series and geez, like 4 years later, what an arc.
Wow. Uh, I had when I went back to restore and remaster the series, uh, we started and it started playing. We're on Crave TV here in Canada. We're on
Mhm.
Roku as well. We're in about almost 40 countries now, and we ended up uh, getting our social media started to really grow. Well, I didn't even know what social media was before then, but we had we got a lot of comments coming in from people remembering, and there were two things that just about everybody wanted to talk about. One was the environment, and it was the raccoons was their very first introduction to the sensitivity of our planet and the environment and how the raccoons made them opened up their eyes to it, I guess. The other thing was the music and the songs. They always wanted, where can we get the songs? Where can we get it? So I went out and tried to get a record deal, knocked on some doors, uh, almost got one. Well, actually got one in the UK, but couldn't bring it to fruition. Uh, and just kept going and going. And there was there is a gentleman who works for CBC in Saskatchewan, and he's a big, uh, I guess, 80s music lover. And I guess, I think he met Jonathan Simkin on a camping trip. Not that they were camping together. I just don't see two of them doing it. His name was Terry Cochran, but he had met Jonathan and had the same kind of reaction that you did. And that is an amazing individual, honest as the day is long.
Mm.
He enters into every relationship, I believe, like he could be a lawyer for both sides, and he's just that kind of a guy, just he's got a judicial way of thinking, what's good for both sides.
Yeah.
Anyway, Taryn said, "You got to meet this guy. I told him about Raccoons, and I think you got to meet him." I said, "Okay, that sounds great." Uh, and it was 2 years ago. Uh, it was the long weekend in uh, Labor Day, and Jonathan was in Toronto, and at the time, I guess I still was living in Toronto, and we got together at a coffee shop, and I had no idea what he would look like. And in he came. He's got really long hair, and he just looks like I used to look, when my hair was longer and dark brown or reddish brown.
Yeah.
And we just hit it off. He didn't even know Raccoons. And he went back and he checked with his assistant at the time, and oh my God, Raccoons! And she started to educate him all about Raccoons, and we just kept the relationship going. I would send him tracks and give him the story ideas and what had happened, and next thing you know, we cut a deal. We've restored and remastered all 5 albums, and kind of cool that the plan they've got, which you probably know as well, that they are including as bonus tracks. They've gone back and gotten several artists to cover some of the songs on Raccoons, and to include them as bonus tracks. So the first album drops, I think, end of next week,
Mm.
and they've got Fionn, who are a Billboard #1 chart topping artist, a duo, 2 twin sisters. Uh, I guess, yeah, 2 would make a twin. Yeah, 2
Yeah.
twin sisters. And they've done a spectacular version of Run With Us, and a video that I think is going to blow people's minds. It's just incredible. And I'm not allowed to say who the next artist is, but
Don't get us in trouble. Jonathan's too good at his job.
no, no, no. I'm sworn to secrecy. But I'm allowed to mention Fionn, and they did a great job. I think people are going to love it. And but the next artist, oh my God, it's fantastic what they've done.
Cool.
So the whole team at 604, just the best, the best. And I, they've brought so much out in me that I just want to, because they're so good and so kind, that they push me.
Yeah.
Push is the wrong word. I
Yeah.
just I want to do whatever I can to help them, because they're just great people. That's what it comes down to.
It takes a village, and I mean, you yourself
Yeah.
said it early on this call that you just wanna pass things on, and it's very hard to pass things on without support in a team, and this is obviously the team that was meant to be for you at this point in time. I'm really grateful for your time.
Oh, thank you.
You are so real. You are full of life and love. It seems like you're a genuinely kind person who's just had an incredible career. You're an inspiration for me in mid-70s, and you're still going. That's my goal, is just to keep giving back as much as possible for as long as possible. Um, and I'm sure there's so much more to come. Final word. What is the piece of advice that you would leave for viewers and listeners, the younger generation, to put in their pocket and take away? The KG special.
The KG special. Hmm. Um, pass. Give what you would expect back. I think that if you kind of live by that, you'll be fine. Don't don't over expect, but remember where you came from. Maybe that's the KG special. Always
I
remember where you came from.